I always thought driving down back roads was more interesting than taking the main highway. There's something about the deserted shoulders, the crooked gates, the skinny dogs that reminds me the world is still strange. Maybe that's why I still take rides at night, even after everything. That night, just before 3 in the morning, I accepted a request on the app. Old neighborhood near the edge of the rural zone. I was tired, but my therapist's voice still buzzed in my head. Face the real world little by little. Leave the control tower. The destination was downtown, about 40 minutes away. When I arrived, she was already waiting. Hair tied back, dark clothes, a small backpack. She didn't seem nervous, but glanced around with a disguised tension. When she got in, she looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "You can follow the GPS, but there's a part better to avoid. I'll let you know." I nodded. Her voice wasn't unfamiliar. Maybe I'd given someone like her a ride before. We started the ride in silence. I was on alert, as usual. Since the accident, my body reacts to any new stimulus with a slight delay, like I'm behind a curtain. The psychiatrist calls it dissociation. I call it survival. After about 15 minutes, she said, "Have you ever been in a situation where everything depended on you?" The question came out of nowhere. I glanced at her quickly in the mirror. "Yeah, why?" She shrugged. "Just curious. I think we've all been there. Some people just prefer to forget." Something about that made me uneasy. I swallowed hard. I remembered the shrill sound of the alarm, the overlapping voices on the headset, the frozen radar, 11:47 p.m., Flight 718. The ATR-72 lost communication and then disappeared. 32 people, including a child laughing in the background of the last recording. I can't remember if I cleared the turn or if it was the pilot. That eats at me. She looked out the window and said, "Sometimes I think I died that day, but I keep dreaming of the landing." My heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be. The voice, the tone. Sorry, did you mention the day of an accident?" She didn't answer, just pointed to a street on the right. "Turn here, avoids the flooded stretch." I obeyed, but my hands were shaking. Was it her? The passenger from 718? But no one survived. That was, in October, right? Or was it September? I get them mixed up. I remember the smell of burnt coffee in the control room. The last phrase, "We've got low visibility, but proceeding." She turned her face toward me, and there was something far too calm in her eyes. "You know what they say about responsibility. That sometimes it's nobody's fault. But pain always needs a name." My jaw clenched. I don't know why, but I thought of my father. He always said, "Some things only exist when you open the door." Maybe I never should have accepted that ride. As I drove, I felt a thick presence in the car. The air seemed still. I wanted to ask who she was, but my voice wouldn't come out. She simply pointed to the next turn, like she had taken this route before. Maybe she had. Maybe it was a replay. Maybe I was just reliving it. But if that's true, why now? Why with her? As Susan Sontag said, all terror is a form of knowledge. I follow that thought. The ride isn't over yet, but I feel the destination isn't where the map says it is. We entered a part of the city I hadn't seen in years. The kind of place where the street lights flicker like bad memories, and everything smells faintly of rust. She didn't say anything, but I could feel her eyes on the back of my neck. The hairs there stood up. "I used to come here," I said. "I don't know why. Maybe to fill the silence." She nodded, as if she already knew. You used to eat pastel at the corner bar after the night shift. I looked at her in the mirror. How do you know that? She didn't answer, just smiled faintly like she'd caught me in a lie I didn't know I was telling. We passed the bar. It was closed, but I could still see the metal stools stacked inside. I remembered the flavor of the greasy dough, the way the fluorescent lights buzzed like insects in my ears. That was before Flight 718, before the name on the news, before I became the guy who froze at 11:47. Why me? I finally asked. My voice sounded thinner than I expected. She leaned forward slightly. Because you stayed. I didn't understand. Stayed where? In the tower, she said. You didn't run. You watched it vanish. And you carried it. The words hit me like a change in cabin pressure. I pulled over, not abruptly, just enough to catch my breath. I stared at the steering wheel for a long time. She didn't move, didn't urge me on, just waited. I didn't know if it was my fault, I said. She nodded again. That's the worst part. When you don't know. The silence stretched out, and in that quiet, I remembered something, a detail, the pilot's voice at the end. There was hesitation, not mine, his. He'd asked for clearance, but he hadn't waited for the response. I began. I think it wasn't just me. She leaned back. Her expression didn't change, but I felt something shift. The weight in the air lessened, just a fraction. We're almost there, she said. Where is there? She pointed. A cul-de-sac I didn't recognize. But the trees looked familiar. There was an empty house with a broken porch light. A shape passed in the window, but maybe it was just the reflection of my own thoughts. She opened the door. You don't have to follow. This was your part. I almost asked her name, but I knew she wouldn't give it. As she stepped out, I felt the car lighten. The air moved again. She walked up to the house and disappeared into the dark. I sat there for a long time, watching, breathing, remembering. Maybe she was never really there. Maybe I conjured her out of guilt, out of memory. But part of me thinks, no, she was real enough to say what no one else ever could. As Joan Didion said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. I followed that thought. I started the engine. The GPS recalculated, and I drove on a little lighter than before. I didn't drive home right away. Something made me circle the block again, slowly, like I was orbiting a memory that wouldn't settle. The cul-de-sac sat still, swallowed by the hush of pre-dawn. No movement, no figure in the window. I told myself I was just making sure she got inside safely. But there was more to it. I wanted to see if anything changed, if she vanished, if the house did. Nothing did. At a red light, I opened the control tower audio archive on my phone. I hadn't done that in months. I told myself I'd deleted the files. Turns out I hadn't. The last 15 minutes of Flight 718. Static, tension, and then tower requesting permission for vector change due to weather. Silence. Tower. The next part had always been missing in my memory, but this time I caught it. A breath. Mine. 718. Hold position. Repeat. Hold. They didn't hold. I closed the app. My hand was shaking. It wasn't a mistake. Not exactly. But it wasn't clarity either. The ambiguity still lived in my spine. That's the thing no one tells you about trauma. It doesn't fade. It adapts. Finds new ways to speak. When I looked up, I was in front of my old apartment. I hadn't keyed in that address. The GPS must have done it. Or maybe I had without realizing. The building was abandoned now. Fire damage. tagged walls. The place where I lived the year of the crash. The year I stopped believing in closure. Inside, there used to be a mirror in the hallway, cracked from when I punched it the night the investigation closed. No blame assigned. I got out of the car. The door creaked behind me. The air smelled like ash and wet wood. And then I heard it. The sound of a plane overhead, low, too low. I looked up and saw nothing. Still, I knew the sound. It passed. I stood there a moment longer, then reached into my coat pocket. There was something there I didn't remember putting in. A boarding pass, Flight 718, my name on it. I stared, laughed, just once. A dry, rusted sound. Maybe guilt is its own kind of itinerary. A loop, a reroute that keeps bringing you back to where you stalled. I sat on the front step, lit a cigarette I hadn't smoked in 2 years, watched the sky turn that strange gray blue of almost morning. As Albert Camus once said, in the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me, there lay an invincible summer. I'm not sure that's true, but tonight, the cold feels less sharp, and I think I might be done driving for a while. I've always found it strange how easily people surrender their location. Every time we unlock our phones, we're telling someone where we are, or worse, where we want to be. But then again, who am I to talk? I only started thinking about that after I realized no one was really asking for permission. My car broke down outside a pharmacy. Battery gone, no cabs in sight. Raining like hell. I downloaded Uber for the first time in 2 years, maybe 3. My last ride had been forgettable. This one wouldn't be. I selected the destination, home. The car arrived faster than I expected. A pale gray sedan, windows tinted just enough to seem indifferent. The license plate matched. The driver's name was listed as Vin. No photo. He didn't speak when I got in. Just tapped something on his dash and started moving. The city outside blurred under the rain. We weren't taking the main road. Is this the fastest way? I asked. Silence. I glanced at the app. There was no map visible, just a message. Your profile is being evaluated. Estimated destination clearance pending. I blinked. Cleared? I tried to reset the app. No response. Tried to unlock the door. Still locked. Excuse me, I said. Where exactly are we going? He finally spoke. Soft, calm, like an elevator voice. You're on the wait list. Just relax. The wait list for what? He didn't answer. The streetlights started to repeat. Same post, same flicker, same billboard frame, but blank. I remembered something I once read in Kafka. It is often safer to be in chains than to be free. I didn't agree at the time. I might now. We passed places I'd never seen, but that felt eerily curated. A bookstore I once stole from. A diner where I lied to someone I loved. A school I walked past every day and never entered. Each one pulled a thread I thought had dissolved. Why these places? I asked. He tapped the dash again. A calm chime. The screen flashed. Relevant behavioral markers detected. My stomach turned. Am I being judged? He shrugged. You're being sorted. I looked at the rearview mirror. His face was distorted by rain. Or maybe something else. Sorted by who? No one in particular, he said. but everyone together. We drove on. The rain stopped, but the windshield stayed wet. Time didn't move right. I thought about the messages I'd left unanswered, the headlines I skipped, the small things I told myself didn't matter because they were small, but they added up. Maybe that was the point. As the car slowed, the app blinked. Evaluation in progress. Please remain seated. I wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But I wasn't ready either. The car took a turn into a tunnel I didn't recognize. Not a public route. Something deeper, underlit with walls made of composite or old concrete. The kind of place you pass through in dreams or memories you tried to delete. The app chimed again. Review phase initiated. A screen blinked to life on the seat back in front of me. Footage, but not security cam footage. This was subjective. From my point of view, things I'd seen and ignored. A woman being harassed in a train station while I kept walking. A colleague crying in a meeting room I quietly closed the door on. A phone call I let ring out again and again. This isn't fair, I said aloud. The driver didn't answer, or maybe he couldn't. A new line appeared on the screen. Silence is a response. I swallowed hard. You can't measure people this way. But you do. That one wasn't on the screen. The voice came through the speakers, not the driver's voice. It was mine. My voice clearer than I remembered it. Calm, cold. I tried to open the door again, still locked. You're not trapped, the voice said. You're just being given a view, one you've denied yourself. The tunnel curved upward. A strange light seeped in, green, not quite natural. The interior of the car shimmered slightly like heat on asphalt. And then it all stopped. We were parked outside a mirror, but massive, mounted like a screen across the wall, floor to ceiling. I stared into it. The reflection didn't match. My clothes were wrong. My expression wasn't mine. Too confident, too distant, like the version of me I pretend to be in every meeting, every post, every profile. That's who you've been training the system to recognize, the voice said. The app screen blinked again. Final question, who do you believe you are when no one is watching? I couldn't answer, not because I didn't know, because the moment I tried, all the versions I'd built came rushing in, and none of them fit. Please, I whispered, I just want to go home. A pause, then define it. The lights cut out. I opened my eyes to daylight. Not sunlight, not quite, just a soft process glow through polarized glass. The car had stopped. We were in a white space, not a room, not a garage, just space, designed to feel neutral. The driver was gone. No doors, no sounds, no cues. In front of me, a panel. A single question hovered on it, blinking. Are you ready to proceed? But there was no yes or no. Just a place to write something, a field labeled, define your function. I sat there staring. I had no idea what they wanted. Who was they? The app? A system? Some vast neural filter we all trained and now had no power over? Maybe it didn't matter. The truth was, I didn't know my function. I'd coasted through careers, relationships, politics, causes, just enough to seem like I was moving, never deep enough to cost something real. But was that a flaw or just survival? What do we owe to a world that only seems to notice when we fall in line or fall apart? What's the moral weight of apathy dressed as politeness? Of convenience disguised as safety? How do you answer for a life where you rarely said no, but almost never meant yes? Maybe the hardest kind of accountability isn't legal or public. It's private, internal. The mirror you eventually have to stop avoiding. I didn't type anything. I just closed my eyes. I waited. The panel blinked off. The door clicked open behind me. The city was there again. Familiar noise, real air, everything as I'd left it. But the app was gone from my phone. No icon, no history. I stood on the sidewalk, watching people pass. Not one of them looked at me, and for once, I didn't wonder why. There's something about traveling inland that makes you feel like the world is peeling away behind you. I've always liked that. The idea that movement erases traces, like no one's following and nothing is watching. I don't think that's true anymore. I'd flown in for a funeral I didn't want to attend. Hers, obviously. Amelia. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since she left the city. The story was she crashed her car near a small town called Hollow Pines, middle of nowhere. Her mother said it was rain. Her brother said it was the curve. Everyone else said nothing, just nodded and looked away. I didn't ask questions then. I do now. The bus dropped me in a neighboring town. No car rentals, no cabs. The app I downloaded, some local rideshare knockoff called MobiTrack Regional, offered one option, an offline route driver named Mauro. No picture, just a rating, 5.0. I hesitated, then accepted. He arrived in a dusty hatchback with tinted windows and an old dashboard cam that blinked green. Mauro didn't speak much, just greeted me with a nod. I got in. "Where to?" he asked. "Hollow Pines?" He started the engine. The route never showed on the screen. No map, no distance, no ETA, just manual route active. "Do you know the way?" I asked. "I know where we're going," he said. I looked out the window as the landscape shifted, not gradually, but suddenly, like we'd skipped a few frames. We passed towns that didn't show up in search results, gas stations without signs, bus stops with names I half recognized, though I'd never been there. I asked Mauro how long it would take. His answer was slow, almost rehearsed. Long enough to remember, not long enough to escape. I didn't know what he meant, but then the road narrowed, the trees pressed in, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. A crooked iron sign, burned letters, Santo Retiro. "Wait," I said, "that's not the way to Hollow Pines." "No," Mauro said, "but it's the way to her." I felt my chest tighten. I hadn't told him about Amelia. I turned to ask who he was, but the words got caught in my throat. The sky outside had shifted. The sun was too low for that time of day. The air looked like it had been filtered through memory. We drove on. Mauro drove in silence for another 10 minutes, or maybe longer. Time had become soft around the edges, elastic, unreliable. The trees thickened, the road thinned, and the sky took on that muted, unfinished gray of late winter afternoons. The kind that makes every thought feel heavier than it should. Eventually we reached a clearing. A lone wooden sign hung from a rusted post. Mirador 12. The gravel beneath the tires crackled as we rolled to a stop. "This is it?" I asked. Mauro turned the engine off. "This is where she turned around." I stared at the windshield. I thought the crash was at a curve near Hollow Pines. He didn't move. She stopped here. Sat for over an hour, they say, just past the mile marker. The crash came later, but the choice didn't. I stepped out. The air was cold but still. Even the wind felt hesitant. The overlook was narrow, fenced in by old wood and weeds. Below, the valley stretched out like something forgotten, a spill of hills and gray-green trees untouched by time or memory. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. I walked to the edge and looked down. A faint shimmer of twisted guardrail caught the light far below. Her car went off there. Morrow joined me, hands in his pockets. It didn't veer. It didn't swerve. It accelerated. A pause, long enough for the weight to settle in. Everyone said it was rain, I muttered. They needed it to be. He handed me something small, a piece of folded paper, soft and creased with age. I wasn't supposed to have this, he said, but I was the one who found the car. I opened it, Amelia's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Tell him I didn't vanish. Tell him he never really looked. The words cut, not like a blade, but like a whisper you've been trying not to hear. She tried to reach me, I said, barely breathing. She waited longer than most would, Morrow said. I sat down on the cold wooden bench behind us, the kind tourists use for selfies. I buried my face in my hands. She used to say I saw everything but her, that I always needed a map to go anywhere, directions for how to love someone. Maybe she was right. She didn't need you to save her, he said. She just needed not to feel invisible. For a long time, we didn't speak. Eventually, I looked at him. Why are you showing me this? He shrugged. You're the one who booked the ride. I thought I was going to a funeral. You are, he said, but not hers. The meaning lingered. Sharp, confusing. True. I looked back at the paper. Her words echoed. He never really looked. And maybe I hadn't. Not at her, not at myself, not at the pieces we left unspoken. As Elton John sang, I'm not the man they think I am at home. And maybe I wasn't even the man I thought I was. We drove back in silence, and I haven't used a GPS since. I've always hated that phrase. Call me when you ride. It's not that I don't get it. It's sweet, even protective. But it feels like we're all just announcing our survival in stages now, as if life's become a series of checkpoints. Made it to work, made it home, made it through the night. Still, I texted it earlier. I told Sophia to let me know she got back okay, even though she only lived 6 blocks from the bar. And then I stood there on the sidewalk for a full minute, wondering who I was trying to protect, her or myself. I called the Uber without thinking. Just muscle memory. It was late, not quite 3 a.m., but close enough that the sky felt empty. The app said 6 minutes, then 4, then 2. I remember looking up at the streetlight and thinking, this corner used to be brighter. Or maybe that's just how it felt when we were younger, drunker, invincible. The car arrived. A black Toyota Corolla, windows half fogged. Driver name? Noel. 5 stars. 4,622 rides. I opened the back door and paused. You sure it's me? I asked. He gave a small smile. Would I be here if it wasn't? I got in. The car smelled like winter. Not pine or cinnamon or whatever they sell in air fresheners. Actual winter. Cold metal and old wool. We pulled away from the curb. The city blurred in reverse. Long night? He asked. Is there any other kind? He didn't laugh. Just nodded like I'd said something useful. A few minutes in, he said, "Want me to wait to make sure you really get there?" I blinked. "Sorry?" "Should I wait at drop-off?" he clarified, "just to make sure you really arrive." Something in the phrasing unsettled me. No, that's okay. Up to you." We drove in silence for a while. I checked the app. The destination was right, my apartment, but the route was strange, longer, cutting through neighborhoods I hadn't driven through in years. I thought about saying something, but didn't. I stared out the window. We passed a corner store that looked too familiar, one I swore had been torn down. Then an old bus stop where I used to wait in college. Same rusted frame, same peeling ad for a concert that happened 10 years ago. I leaned forward. "This isn't the fastest way." Noel kept his eyes on the road. "It's the way your app chose." "My app? It's tailored now. Memory integrated, emotional shortcuts." I laughed. "That's not a real thing." But he didn't respond. I checked my phone again. The screen had dimmed. The app was still open, but the icon looked wrong, sharper, off-center. And then my phone buzzed. A message from a number with no name. "Are you still with him?" I frowned. No context. I typed back, "Who is this?" No response. Just another message. "You left without saying goodbye again." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Noel," I said, "did anyone else get in this car?" He met my eyes in the mirror. "Would you know if they did?" I tried to laugh it off, but my throat was dry. I reached for the door handle. It was locked. The car slowed. We were outside my old apartment, not my current place, the one I shared with James, the one I left one night after a fight and never returned to. The porch light was on. "No," I said louder. "This isn't—" He turned in the seat. "Sometimes arrival isn't about where you are. It's about what you face." My phone buzzed again. A voice message this time. It was my voice, but I didn't remember recording it. "You promised you'd call when you arrived, but I don't think you ever made it, did you?" My hands were shaking. I unlocked the door manually and stepped out. The air smelled like his cologne, like August, like memory. I turned around to confront Noel, but the car was gone. No engine, no taillights, just silence. As Taylor Swift says, "I'm the problem, it's me." I followed that thought. The porch light flickered. I stepped closer to the door, not because I wanted to, but because the weight of memory is heavier than fear. The paint was still chipped. The plant pot I'd kicked during the last argument was still there, cracked but upright. That didn't make sense. James moved out a year ago, maybe more. Why would it still look like this? I reached for the doorknob. It turned easily. Inside, the apartment was dim and still, not dusty, preserved, as if I'd only stepped out for groceries. The air smelled like garlic and heat. The hallway light was on. I heard a pan sizzle in the kitchen. I took one step, then another. "James?" No answer. Just the faintest hum of the old fridge, the one we kept meaning to replace. I passed the mirror in the hallway and stopped. My reflection didn't match. Not completely. My hair was tied differently. The shirt I wore that night, the one I left in, that couldn't be right. I touched the glass. It felt cold, real. I blinked, and the reflection caught up. "Hello?" I said again. From the kitchen, a voice, my voice. "You always run at the same point?" I froze. I stepped slowly toward the sound. The kitchen was dark except for the stove lights, a plate on the table, 2 glasses, wine, red. There was no one there. But my phone buzzed. New message. Again, from no one. This time, stay long enough to listen. Then a second one. He never even got to ask you why. I gripped the table's edge. My legs were shaking. Was this guilt? A dream? A punishment? The fridge hummed louder, a low, distorted vibration. I stumbled back into the hallway. The mirror again. Now it showed nothing. I turned to leave. The door was gone. Where it once stood, just wall. Seamless, smooth. My chest tightened. I gasped. Dizzy. "Noel?" I said aloud. No response. I backed into the living room. The couch, the books, everything in its place. But it was wrong. It all felt too sharp. As if someone had recreated it from memory. A near-perfect replica. Just off enough to make me notice. My phone rang. Blocked number. I answered. My voice. Again. "You're not supposed to leave before you understand what you did." "I didn't. You disappeared. You called it safety, but it was just absence." Tears ran down my face before I realized I was crying. "What do you want from me?" Silence. Then, arrival. The call ended. The apartment shimmered, like film left too long in the projector. Colors bleeding, shapes softening. The couch flickered, the walls dimmed. And I remembered. I never told James why I left. I never answered his messages. I blocked him, not to hurt him, but because I couldn't bear to explain, because I didn't know, because maybe Taylor was right. I'm the problem. It's me. The room softened, a warmth behind me. I turned. The front door had returned. I walked toward it. Outside, the street was real again. Not loud, not empty, just real. Noel's car was waiting, engine quiet, window down. He nodded. "Ready?" I sat down at the back. He didn't ask where to. We both knew. There's something about driving after midnight that feels like operating in a different country. Same streets, same buildings, but none of it behaves the way you expect. The city loosens its grip on reality when the bars close and the phones die. I think that's why I still work night shifts. Or maybe I just prefer driving people who don't expect conversation. It was raining when I accepted the first ride. Not a storm, just a fine mist that turned the windshield into static. The pickup was near an all-night pharmacy. A passenger named Elias. He was already waiting under the awning when I pulled up. Thin guy, hood up, eyes red, maybe from crying, maybe just tired. He got in the back without a word. "Hey," I said. "Elias?" He nodded. "Yeah, that's me." The route was short, 10 minutes maybe, but the streets looked older than usual, not cracked, just outdated, like someone had loaded an archived version of the city. "You been out long?" I asked. He stared at the road. "A while." We drove past a boarded-up movie theater. It had burned down years ago, but tonight the marquee was lit. Coming soon. Time without end. I glanced at Elias. He was smiling faintly. "I saw that one here, I think." "You sure?" He didn't respond, just murmured, "Feels like something I forgot to remember." I dropped him off at a dead-end street near the train yard. No houses, no buildings, just gravel and a fence. "You okay to walk?" I asked. He stepped out slowly. "Yeah, I know this part." That ride stuck with me. The next one was a woman named Karen. Her pickup was in a neighborhood that hadn't existed 10 years ago. But I recognized the trees, same twisted branches from the street where I totaled my first car. No one was hurt. But I never drove that stretch again. until now. Karen got in, older than Elias. She was staring at her hands like they were foreign. "Where to?" I asked. She looked at me. "Don't you know?" The app chimed. Destination. Pending. She didn't enter anything, but the car started moving anyway. "I think I was here once," she whispered, "in a dream or something like it." "Karen, do I know you?" I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer, just said, "You were the last person I saw before the ambulance came." I slammed the brakes. She looked calm. "It's okay. I'm just passing through. You don't have to stop. Just let it finish." The car drove again. The rain got heavier, or maybe the light got darker. It was hard to tell. As Billie Eilish sang, "Isn't it strange how we all get a little bit weird at night?" I followed that thought. The rain eased off, but my pulse didn't. Karen had vanished after I dropped her. Not walked away. Vanished. 1 second, she was in the seat behind me, and the next, it was just silence. No door sound, no wet footprint, just a faint warmth in the seat that faded fast. I told myself I imagined it, that the rain, the fatigue, the weird energy of the night, it was getting to me. I was overdue for a break. But the app pinged again. Passenger. Unknown. Pickup near. I stared at it. The map didn't load. Just a pulse. A red dot. Against my better judgment, I accepted. The location was a bridge near the edge of the city, the same one I used to cross on my way to high school. No one waited there anymore. No buses, no routes. Just old concrete and wind. But there he was, a man in a raincoat. Could have been anyone. He got in slowly, like he didn't want to disturb the air. No name. No hello. I asked, "Where to?" He just said, "I'm the last one." I felt the steering wheel tighten under my hands. "You've done this before," he added. "You just don't want to remember." I drove. Streets I didn't recognize peeled open in front of us. Industrial blocks. Hollowed out neighborhoods, all lined with buildings that had too many windows or none at all. Places that felt borrowed from a dream or a buried fear. "You hit someone here," he said quietly. "What?" His voice was steady. "Not on purpose. It was late. You were tired. The street light was out. You told yourself they ran into the road." I felt my knuckles go cold. "That didn't happen," I said, but the memory bloomed, vague, incomplete, the jolt, the quiet. The moment after when I sat hands still on the wheel, not getting out. "You left?" he said. I thought they got up." They didn't. I pulled over. My breath came in short bursts. "I would have remembered." "You do, but only at night." I turned around. The back seat was empty. No one there. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, engine humming low, watching the wipers drag a rhythm across the windshield like an old clock counting down. When I finally reached for my phone, there was a new message. "You've reached your destination." But it wasn't from the app. No logo, no interface, just plain text on a blank background. And under it, a location pin, the exact spot where I'd stopped the car that night. The place I never reported, the place I never returned to. I don't remember deleting the footage from the dash cam. I tell myself I never saw it, but I remember plugging in the cable. I remember thinking, if I don't watch it, it didn't happen. I opened my glove compartment. The old flash drive was still there. I plugged it in. The screen blinked. Yeah, static. Then light. Then the image of the street. My hands on the wheel. A figure stepping into the frame. Not fast, not careless. Deliberate. Looking straight at the car. Looking straight at me. I hit pause. My heart was in my throat. I closed my eyes. Tried to breathe. Maybe the worst thing isn't doing harm. Maybe it's deciding not to know how much. I rewound, played again. The figure looked younger, familiar, and then I saw it. A reflection in the windshield. My own eyes, wide, awake. I hadn't been tired. I'd just chosen not to stop. The next ping came minutes later. Another ride, anonymous. A pickup near the same bridge. I didn't accept it. I sat there in the dark car, lights off, engine quiet, and let the silence settle in. We live our lives convincing ourselves that memory is truth, that what we forget must be harmless. But what if the opposite is true? What if the things that vanish are the ones we buried because they matter too much? How many people do we leave behind in the dark? Not because we're cruel, but because it's easier to keep driving than to stop and look. How many of us are still circling the same event, hoping time will fix what we refuse to face? I drive fewer nights now, but I never take the bridge. I've always said that driving at night is like listening to a song you don't remember learning. Something about the rhythm of the road and the way the world gets smaller, only as wide as your headlights, makes you feel like you're in control. But you're not. Not really. You're just borrowing clarity from the dark. That night started like any other. I had promised myself it would be my last ride. My legs were stiff, my jaw tight, and I kept forgetting what day of the week it was. Wednesday, I think, or Thursday already. I had accepted a trip a bit outside my usual perimeter. The money was good, too good. The pickup address was a gas station already closed for the night, and the passenger never showed. So I left, deciding to cut through a marginal road to save fuel. I don't usually do that. Too isolated, too many animals darting out, and the occasional drunk driver thinking he's the only soul awake. But I was tired, and the road felt still, silent in a way that made me forget to put music on. Somewhere around Kilometer 86, I saw it. A car parked awkwardly on the shoulder. Its emergency lights were blinking slowly like they were giving up. The rear of the car was open, the trunk, I mean, and the rain had started to pick up, just light enough to smear everything with shadow. I slowed down. Habit. At first, I thought the driver had just stepped out for a piss or was checking a tire. But then I saw two things that made me, I don't know, switch. First, there was someone in the trunk, a woman, legs curled inward, motionless, head tilted too far to the side. Second, standing just behind the car was a man in a black jacket talking on the phone. But it wasn't normal talking. He was pacing in tight circles like a dog before sleep, looking toward the trunk and waving one arm like he was trying to convince someone of something urgent. I couldn't hear his voice, but I could feel it. I don't know how else to say it. I remember hesitating. My foot hovered over the brake, not pressing it, not yet. My hand went to my phone. No signal. The road dipped just after that, and I passed them without stopping. Not speeding either, just floating. The image of the woman stuck in my mind like an echo. Bare feet, a smudge of red across her forehead, eyes closed, but not peacefully. I kept telling myself, maybe she's drunk. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I just saw it wrong. But then I checked my rearview mirror. The man had stopped pacing. He was facing me now, not walking, not shouting, just watching. I don't know how he knew I'd seen, but I think he did. after that, everything felt wrong. Every branch on the roadside looked like it might reach out. The rain became louder somehow, even though it hadn't changed. I kept checking the mirror. No car behind me. But my gut screamed he was coming, that he would catch up, that I had seen something I wasn't supposed to, and that meant I belonged to it now. I passed a gas station, closed, a motel with one flickering neon O that made me laugh, which felt insane. I considered calling the police again, but my signal was still gone. And here's the part I can't get out of my head. I didn't turn around. I didn't stop. I didn't help. I kept driving. That's the moment I go back to in my mind. The not doing, not the seeing, not the fear, the not acting. I wish I could say I was paralyzed, but that would be too noble. I was calculating, measuring cost versus risk, like it was a decision I could afford to make. When I got home, I parked the car in silence and sat there with the engine off. 5 minutes? 10? My legs were still, but my chest was tight, like I'd been running. That night, I dreamt of a blinking light. Nothing else. Just the car's hazard lights, fading in and out like a dying signal. The next morning, I turned on the news. Nothing. Nothing for 2 days. On the third, there was a small report. A body had been found near Kilometer 86. No suspects, no witnesses. Female, early 30s. No name released. I stared at the screen like it was accusing me, like it knew. And the thing is, maybe it did. I keep telling myself that there are people trained for this, that I'm not a hero, that it's better not to get involved. But when I close my eyes, I see her, not moving, not blinking. I remember a quote. Don't ask me where I read it. Some book or article I half finished years ago. Maybe it was Hannah Arendt. I think so. Evil becomes banal when it is accepted without question. I follow that thought. Because that's what I did, isn't it? I accept it. And now I carry it. Not like guilt, exactly. More like a passenger that won't get out. I told myself I'd never take that road again. But 4 nights later, it happened. A client booked a cash ride outside the app. Some rich guy's assistant, probably trying to avoid paper trails. The address was in the same direction. Not exactly Kilometer 86, but close enough to make my stomach clench. I considered refusing, but I needed the money. I rehearsed a plan. I'd stick to the main road. No detours, no marginal routes. It was working until I saw the detour sign. Some kind of accident ahead, traffic redirected. And guess where the detour led? Yeah, Kilometer 86. It was quieter this time. No rain. The trees looked taller somehow, like they'd been watching me all week, stretching closer. As I approached the curve, I slowed down. I didn't want to. My hands did it anyway. The shoulder where the car had been was empty. No blinking lights. No trunk open like a screen. But then, further ahead, there he was, walking. Same jacket, same silhouette. The man. He was walking on the edge of the road, toward me, like he'd been waiting all this time. No car, no phone, no woman, just him. I almost didn't believe it. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. Still there, closer now. I didn't stop, but I slowed too much, too obviously. We'd locked eyes for half a second, that's all. But it was enough. I swear, he recognized me. There was no surprise in his face, no confusion, just a kind of quiet certainty, like this moment had already happened. I pressed the gas. The car surged forward, and I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew he was still watching. Back in the city, I couldn't shake it. I kept checking behind me at red lights, scanning sidewalks for the shape of his jacket. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I started seeing him everywhere, on corners and windows, reflected in mirrors. Always still, always waiting. And then the report came. Small segment, buried in the local feed, body identified. Authorities investigating suspected homicide near Kilometer 86. Her name was Luana. She'd been reported missing 2 weeks earlier. Teacher, 33. No known enemies. My chest tightened. I hadn't even known her name when I chose not to stop. People always say they do the right thing in a crisis, that they jump in, call someone, try something, but the truth is, most of us don't. We freeze, or worse, we calculate. And the part that keeps me up isn't what I saw. It's that I looked away, that I gave myself permission. I tried to report it days later. I really did. I walked into a station, filled out half the form, talked to a young officer with tired eyes. But I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. What was I going to confess? That I'd passed by? That I'd seen a woman and did nothing? That I was afraid of a man's look? They wouldn't arrest me. They'd pity me. And I couldn't stand that. I left before finishing the report. I don't think anyone followed up. Some nights I'd drive out there again. I tell myself I'm looking for closure, that maybe I'll see something different this time, something that absolves me. But I never do. Sometimes I see nothing. Sometimes I think I see him again, walking, always walking, like the act itself is the punishment, or maybe the warning. And I wonder, what if he wasn't the killer? What if he was just like me? Another witness, too afraid to intervene, too paralyzed by the shape of evil to name it out loud? What if we both just watched her die? I keep going back to that quote. Hannah Arendt. Evil becomes banal when it is accepted without question. It's not the monsters you should fear. It's the silence, the slow blink of a dying car light, the way the road keeps moving even when something inside you begs to stop. I've always preferred sitting in the back seat, behind the driver, window side, not because I'm antisocial, though I probably am, but because it feels like a little pocket of invisibility, a place to think, to drift, to not be expected to perform. I called the Uber right after the meeting, another pointless round of executive theater, a conference room full of people pretending they cared about numbers none of us believed in. I left early, told them I felt sick. Not a lie, exactly. The car arrived in under 2 minutes. Black sedan, clean. Windows slightly fogged like it had been waiting. The driver didn't speak as I got in, just nodded once in the mirror. No music, no air freshener. The kind of silence that made you think twice before breaking it. The route was supposed to be 25 minutes. Airport hotel to downtown. Straight line. But within the first few turns, I felt something was off. Not wrong. Just familiar. I looked out the window and saw the overpass near my old college dorm, a place that wasn't remotely on the route. I leaned forward. "Hey, are you following GPS?" The driver nodded again. "Yes. Updated preferences." Preferences? He didn't elaborate. I should have insisted. But something in me hesitated. A curiosity, maybe, or fatigue. I leaned back and opened the app. The screen showed the usual. Driver name, Jason, license plate, estimated time. but the destination had changed. It now read, "Location reconstructed." I blinked. Must be a bug. Or maybe I tapped something by accident. I tried editing it. The button didn't respond. We passed a street I hadn't seen in a decade. My grandmother's house. The one with the crooked gate and the mango tree. It had burned down or been torn down, I think. Or maybe I just stopped visiting. Why are we here? No answer. I watched the street fade into the rear view. Then we were on a quiet residential road with tall, narrow trees. My second apartment barely furnished, smelling of detergent and exhaustion. A failed relationship lived there, or maybe two. The building looked newer than I remembered. The driver took another turn. This time, I didn't recognize the area. Industrial, empty, a delivery ramp. He stopped the car without a word. "End of segment," he said. "What segment?" He turned to look at me for the first time. His face was blank, but not cruel. "You requested a curated route." Based on emotional coordinates, I laughed, but it didn't sound convincing. I didn't request anything. The screen on the dashboard lit up, a menu with headings. Guilt, nostalgia, missed opportunities, unfinished conversations. A cursor hovered over unfinished conversations. I stared. What the hell is this? He didn't answer, just drove again. This time, we stopped in front of a cafe I hadn't thought of in years. It was closed, of course, but the lights were on, and inside for a moment, I swear, I saw her, Livia, the one who used to doodle on napkins while I spoke about futures I didn't believe in. I reached for the door handle, locked. "You're not ready for that," the driver said. "How do you know?" He didn't blink. "You never said what needed to be said." I turned to him. My voice shook more than I wanted it to. "Who are you?" "You," he said. "Just one version, the one that listens." I looked at the mirror again. His eyes looked tired, familiar. My jaw clenched, a habit I have when I'm pretending I'm not scared. A detail popped into my mind. The date of that cafe night. Was it 2013 or 2015? I couldn't remember. The edges of memory were slippery. As Susan Sontag once said, "All terror is a form of knowledge." I follow that thought. The car drove on. We passed a playground, a school, a cemetery. I stopped trying to understand the logic. All I knew was that the window seat didn't feel invisible anymore. He didn't start the car again. The dashboard went dark. The only light came from the faint reflection of my face in the passenger window. Tired, sunken, older than I'd ever felt. I looked at him. "Is this the part where you vanish?" "No." He kept his eyes forward. "I don't disappear. You do." The car door unlocked with a soft click. He didn't move. I opened it, half expecting the outside world to be gone, replaced with a loop, a trick, a blank screen. But it was just a street, a quiet, empty street. I stepped out. The moment my foot touched the pavement, the car pulled away. Not abruptly, just definitely. I watched it turn a corner and vanish. No taillights, no sound. I stood there for a long time. Nothing around me looked familiar. It might have been my city. Might not. The buildings were the kind that feel older than you, but not in an architectural way, in a moral way. I walked a little. The app was still open on my phone. Blank screen, no new rides, no history. And then the thoughts came. What if we've built a world that externalizes everything we're too afraid to face alone and called it convenience? What if this endless self-curation, profiles, filters, algorithms, has turned us into passengers of our own desires, always one layer removed from ourselves. How long can someone avoid making real choices before they start believing the routes picked for them were their idea all along? I had let the car drive me through memory and mistake, but none of it was penance, just exposure, and exposure without change is just performance. So what now? Do I rebuild from here? Do I try to reclaim the agency I outsourced to machines, to silence, to comfort? Or do I just wait for the next vehicle to pick me up, already preloaded with who I'm supposed to be? I don't know. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't moving. And maybe that's the start. I noticed it the night after the update. The Uber app had a cleaner interface, new icons, the usual fluff they throw in every few months. But one feature was new. At the end of each ride, a signature line appeared beneath the fare. It looked like this: Signature, Maria Vasconcelos. It struck me because Maria Vasconcelos had been my wife. Had. She died 4 years ago. In a car crash on the same street, I picked up the ride. The coincidence churned something old and bitter in my stomach. I thought it was a glitch. Maybe someone else had her name. But the next night, it happened again. Signature, Eduardo Fonseca. Eduardo was the supervisor who fired me from the air conditioning repair company after I froze up in a panic attack. He died 6 months later, heart failure. I didn't know what to make of it. The rides were normal, quiet, routine, but the destinations, they began to repeat. Places I hadn't thought about in years. The alley where I broke a kid's nose in high school. The restaurant where I lied to my mother about quitting college. A gas station bathroom where I flushed a wedding ring. Each time, a different passenger. Always alone, always distant, and always with a final signature that tied back to me. By the 6th ride, I stopped checking the app immediately. I didn't want to know, but it didn't matter. The names came anyway, in dreams, in flashes on street signs, in graffiti. I tried telling myself it was stress. My therapist said I had unresolved grief. My brother said I needed a vacation. I said nothing. Then came the ride I'll never forget. Pickup 3:11 a.m., unmarked location, destination unknown, and the name beneath the request? Signature, Matthias N. Sousa. My name. The passenger was already in the back seat when I unlocked the doors. I hadn't seen him enter. No ping, no footsteps. He looked like me, or how I used to look, before the weight, the beard, the years. He looked at me like I owed him an apology. "Ready?" he asked. I didn't respond. I started the engine. The GPS didn't light up, no map. Just a straight road ahead, cutting through the dark like a question. He leaned forward, whispered, "You've been signing off on every version of yourself you've tried to bury. This one's the last." The road narrowed. Street lights flickered and died behind us. My hands gripped the wheel too tight. I didn't ask where we were going. I already knew. As Clarice Lispector said, I only achieve lucidity when I am on the edge of the light that had replaced the tunnel. Wasn't sunlight. It was sterile, sourceless, like the illumination in a dream or a hospital corridor. I walked forward, expecting it to end, to return me to the car, to the street, to something real. Instead, I found a parking garage, empty, clean. My car was there, alone, no engine noise, no condensation on the windows. Inside, the screen of the dashboard lit up before I turned the key. New request. Pickup. Unassigned destination. Log out. I almost laughed. Maybe this was hell. Not fire, not punishment, just endless metaphors waiting to be deciphered. Maybe that's what grief does to a person who avoids looking straight at it. I accepted the ride. The car moved without me driving. The steering wheel turned itself, gently. I kept my hands near it like an old ritual. We passed empty intersections where traffic lights blinked yellow forever. Past stores that sold things I'd given up. Guitars, books, dreams, all lit from within, but no doors open. Then a voice. Passenger boarding. He appeared again, but not in the back seat this time, in the mirror. He looked older now. My age, my face now, but rested, clear-eyed. You signed, he said. I nodded. You left nothing blank. Almost nothing, I admitted. He smiled. Enough. We turned a final corner, a wall, endless, smooth as ice. The car slowed and stopped in front of it. No exit, no return. On the screen, sign out. I touched it. The light dimmed. The seat beneath me vanished. My eyes closed, not from fear, but from a kind of consent. I woke up in my apartment, still dressed. The app was open on my phone, no new requests. For the first time, I felt no pressure to check. I just watched the sun coming through the curtains. Real light, with dust in it, and then came the silence, the kind that doesn't comfort, the kind that interrogates. Had I forgiven myself too easily? Who gets to sign off on their own ending without being held accountable first? How many of us use technology as a shield, saying yes to things we barely understand? What does it mean to log out in a world where we're always being tracked, watched, rated? Maybe I didn't overcome anything. Maybe I just ran away cleaner this time. Or maybe acknowledging failure is the most ethical act a person can make. But who decides that? The system? Someone else? Or me? After all these layers? These masks? I wonder how many versions of myself have been driving these endless nights, ferrying passengers to places built out of guilt. How many others are still out there, trapped in the same loop, pretending the routes are just pre-chosen by a bigger app we don't question? Do we ever stop chasing forgiveness and start truly facing what we did with what we knew? I don't have the answer, but today at least